There's a kind of loneliness you can't explain to anyone else, not because you're alone, but because the person sitting right next to you, the one you shared years of your life with, is slowly looking somewhere else. I'm nearing 70 now. She just turned 60. We've been together long enough that silence has become our normal. We stopped saying everything out loud, and maybe that was the problem. You slowly learn to become invisible to the person you once meant everything to. Last year, on an ordinary evening, my partner asked me something I didn't expect. "Are you actually okay?" I still remember the way the room went quiet after that. I said, "Yes." The way people do when they don't know how to explain what's really been hurting them. But the truth was, that question stayed with me for days, because sometimes the deepest loneliness doesn't come from being abandoned. It comes from feeling emotionally unseen by the person who's closest to you. And looking back now, there are things I wish we had understood sooner, things that might have saved us years of silence we never meant to create. Different ages, different retirement. Nobody warned us that 8 years could start feeling like a different generation. When we were younger, the age difference between us barely mattered. 8 years was just a detail we joked about at dinner parties. I used to tease her that I had more wisdom, and she'd smile and remind me she had more energy. Back then, it felt charming, light, almost invisible. But sometime after 60, that gap stopped being theoretical. I'm 68 now, and there are mornings when my body wants quiet before the day even begins. I move slower than I used to. I think longer before agreeing to travel somewhere crowded or stay out late. Meanwhile, she still wakes up with a list. New restaurants, a weekend trip she found somewhere, a project for the house that didn't exist yesterday. What surprised us was not the difference itself. It was how quietly it entered the marriage without either of us noticing. One of us was starting to protect energy, the other was still looking for places to spend it. Neither of us realized for a while that we were reading that as rejection. Two people are not careful, they can begin interpreting those differences personally. For years, I dreamed about moving to Florida. I loved the weather, the slower pace, the golf courses, the feeling that life there unfolded with less pressure. To me, it sounded peaceful. I was ready long before she was, but she needed time, not because she didn't love me. She simply wasn't emotionally finished with the life we already had. Her rhythm had not slowed in the same way mine had. I think that's something many couples underestimate after 60. People assume aging happens equally inside a relationship. It doesn't. Sometimes two people love each other deeply and still arrive at this stage of life with completely different emotional clocks. But later in life, peace has less to do with passion and more to do with whether two people can move at different speeds without losing each other. That realization changed the way we listen to each other. Not perfectly, but more gently than before. And honestly, I didn't expect that to be enough, but it was. Intimacy is not what it used to be. The hardest part wasn't that intimacy changed, it was realizing we had secretly expected it not to. Early in our marriage, closeness felt effortless. We touched constantly. We flirted in grocery stores, kissed in the kitchen, and reached for each other without thinking. There was a kind of physical confidence that came naturally back then, almost like breathing. We honestly believed that version of us would somehow continue forever. Then one day, without any dramatic conversation or obvious turning point, life became quieter, not colder, just quieter. I remember my wife laughing one evening while we answered questions from subscribers. She said, "In the beginning, it was all the time, everywhere." And before I could even respond, we were both laughing because we knew exactly what she meant. Then I admitted something many older couples rarely say out loud. Now it's rare. There's an awkward honesty to admitting that, especially after decades together. People sometimes hear less and immediately assume worse, but those two words are not always the same thing. What changed most was the meaning behind intimacy. When you've spent 40 years beside someone, closeness no longer lives, only inside excitement or desire. Sometimes it appears in smaller, quieter forms that younger couples might overlook completely. It's sitting together after a difficult doctor's appointment without needing to explain your fear. It's hearing "I love you" from across the room while folding laundry. It's falling asleep beside someone and realizing their presence still calms your nervous system. After all these years, I think many people suffer unnecessarily because they believe intimacy is only real if it looks the same forever. As if love has failed the moment it evolves. But aging changes every part of life. The body changes, priorities change, even the way we express affection changes. Why would intimacy be the only thing untouched by time? And maybe that's the real conversation many couples need after 60. Not how do we go back, but how do we stay connected in this new version of ourselves? I'd genuinely love to hear from you here. Do you feel intimacy became deeper, more complicated, or simply different after 60? Your experience may comfort someone else reading these comments tonight, because the truth is, many older couples are quietly relearning each other without admitting it out loud. The body changes, everything. Nobody prepares you for the strange grief of realizing your body no longer responds like the person you still feel you are inside. That may sound uncomfortable to admit, but I think many people over 60 understand exactly what I mean. One day you notice your energy is different. Your timing is different. Your body hesitates where it once reacted instantly, and even when your heart still feels young, the body begins speaking its own language. My wife once said something during a conversation that made us both laugh and then suddenly go quiet. She looked at me and said, "Well, the equipment changes." It was funny because it was true. Men change, women change, desire changes, confidence changes. Sometimes even the willingness to initiate affection changes. And what makes this season emotionally difficult is that many couples misinterpret those physical changes as emotional rejection. A husband starts wondering if his wife still desires him. A wife quietly questions whether she's still attractive. Meanwhile, neither person has actually fallen out of love. I joked one night that the machinery is not what it used to be, and humor honestly helps more than people realize. Aching becomes much less frightening when two people can still laugh gently together, rather than treating every change like a crisis. But beneath the humor, there's something vulnerable happening. After 60, intimacy can no longer survive on instinct alone. Attraction feels automatic. Closeness happens without much planning or emotional translation. Later in life, connection becomes more intentional than automatic. You begin to realize how much patience matters, how much kindness matters, how dangerous assumptions can become. Because sometimes your partner is not pulling away emotionally at all. They're simply adjusting to a body that now moves through the world differently than before. And honestly, I think empathy becomes more attractive with age than confidence ever was in youth. There's something deeply intimate about being understood without shame, about not having to pretend your body hasn't changed, about knowing someone still reaches for your hand even while both of you are becoming older versions of yourselves. That kind of closeness feels less explosive than young love perhaps, but in some ways, it feels far more courageous, especially when two people choose tenderness over embarrassment. Schedule intimacy sounds unromantic. But saved the relationship. There was a season in our marriage when intimacy almost disappeared so quietly that we barely noticed it happening. Nothing dramatic caused it. There was no betrayal, no explosive argument, no moment where love suddenly vanished. Life simply became crowded with routine, fatigue, different sleep schedules, doctor appointments, me, the kind of ordinary exhaustion that slowly turns two spouses into people merely managing. We looked at each other and realized something uncomfortable. We had become incredibly good roommates. That realization hit harder than either of us expected. I remember joking about it first because humor made the truth easier to touch. I said, well, we schedule breakfast, lunch, and dinner. May as well schedule intimacy too. We both laughed, but underneath the joke was something serious. Neither of us could ignore anymore, because if closeness is left entirely to chance after 60, sometimes chance never arrives. That was difficult for us to accept at first. Scheduling intimacy sounded mechanical, almost unromantic. We both carried this quiet belief that a meaningful connection should happen naturally, spontaneously, effortlessly. But aging changes energy in ways younger couples rarely understand. Sometimes one person feels emotionally open at the exact moment the other feels exhausted. Sometimes routine simply numbs desire without either person realizing it. What surprised me most was how much of intimacy had nothing to do with the physical side at all. My wife admitted she grew up in a home where conversations about physical closeness felt embarrassing or inappropriate. I came from the opposite environment, so even after decades together, we still carry completely different emotional languages around vulnerability, shame, affection, and need. I think many long marriages quietly struggle there, not because the love disappeared, but because two people stopped talking honestly about what connection actually requires now. There is something strangely intimate about being able to say, "I miss you," even while sitting in the same room, or admitting, "I don't know how to reconnect lately, but I want to try." Those conversations can feel awkward at first, especially after decades of pretending everything is fine, but silence creates distance much faster than aging ever could. I'm curious whether any of you have experienced this shift too. Have you found that connection after retirement requires more intention than it once did? Sometimes hearing another person say "us too" can remove years of quiet shame. Perhaps that's what lasting love becomes in later life, not effortless closeness, but two people continuing to reach toward each other anyway. Retirement can make one person feel left behind. Retiring can be surprisingly lonely when only one person fully enters it. We received a message once from a woman who had recently moved with her husband to Florida. He had already retired. She was still working remotely for a few more years before she could fully step away from herself. At first, she thought the transition would feel exciting for both of them. A fresh start, better weather, a calmer chapter of life together. But slowly she began feeling left behind inside the very life they had created. Her husband already had a rhythm waiting for him there. Golf in the mornings, pickleball games, lunches with new friends, neighborhood gatherings during the day. He was building community while she sat inside working calls and deadlines from another room. And what made it painful was that neither of them had done anything wrong. They were simply living in two different realities under the same roof. I think retirement changes much more than schedules. It changes a person's sense of belonging. Suddenly, one partner begins creating a new identity, while the other is still emotionally attached to the old one. One feels freedom. The other feels disconnected from the world forming around them. That imbalance can quietly create resentment if couples don't acknowledge it early. What I appreciated most about her message was her honesty. She admitted she kept waiting to naturally fit in, but eventually realized community rarely arrives on its own after 60. Sometimes you have to intentionally go looking for your people, and honestly, the retired partner has responsibility too. Matters to keep reaching back for the person still adjusting, to make space for them emotionally, instead of assuming they'll eventually catch up on their own, because after 60, companionship is not only about sharing a home. It's about helping each other feel included in the life that still remains ahead. By the time we reach 60, almost everything has changed in some way. The body changes, energy changes, desire changes. Even the way two people express love and closeness begins to shift over time. But maybe the most important thing we've learned is this: none of that automatically means something is broken. This season of intimacy may be less impulsive than it once was, less effortless, less idealized. But in many ways, it can also become more honest. After decades together, love is no longer just about excitement or chemistry. Sometimes it's about patience, presence, understanding, the quiet decision to keep meeting each other again and again, even after both people have changed. Perhaps that is the real beauty of love after 60. Not that two people stay exactly the same, but that they continue learning how to walk beside each other anyway. If this conversation spoke to your heart, share this video with someone who may need to hear it too. And until next time, take care of your spirit,